All right, everybody, we are live with the Combatcast. We're going to talk UFC news. We're going to talk about the late, great George Foreman. We're going to talk about our upcoming schedule. Before we do any of that, let's talk about our sponsor.
Yes, we'd like to thank the sponsor for the podcast, Game Up. They make a thirst-quenching adult beverage with a special blend of electrolytes. Comes in 4 great flavors: fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape.
That's right, guys. Only 110 calories as well, low carb. So enjoy yourself some Game Up, and let's talk about what we got coming up on the schedule.
All right, April 5th, UFC Fight Night. Emmett versus Murphy. Very good matchup. Featherweight matchup. 9 p.m. Eastern from the Apex. PFL's also starting a month-long tournament of the world, I think they're calling it, or world tournament. So we might cover some of those fights. Remember, they fight on Friday nights, so the show might come out and fights be canceled or whatever, but we'll talk about that. And then April 12th, we'll be talking about what I'm the most excited about in a long time. UFC 314, Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez, 10 p.m. Eastern from Miami. Yeah. And then April 19th, that is Easter weekend, so there are no UFC fights. PFL's happening, so we might talk about that, or we might come up with something else for you guys.
No, it's crazy. I feel like Florida, Miami in general get like some of the best UFC cards lately.
I mean, just think all the camps and fighters and stuff that come out of Florida, like that makes sense.
I want to say Alex Pereira and Izzy, the second fight was in Florida, in Miami too. But yeah, so good for them, getting a good show. All right, let's go about talking about great crowds. The UK crowd always deliver. They were lively. Not that this main event gave them a lot to be live because it was not the result they were looking for. But before we get to that and we talk about the co-main event, let's talk about a couple other fights on this card.
Well, overall, in general, yes, the fans are usually great. This, as far as London crowds go, this one was pretty lackluster. But I think that had a lot to do with the fights. I saw a lot of people complaining about the ticket prices, although at least the fights were at a reasonable time for them this time. But the card in general, 4 submissions, 9 decisions, 0 knockouts on the whole card. Just kind of rolls that into what we've been talking about, the watered down product, the struggling of really enjoying the UFC lately has been a little bit rough, but you know, we're still watching, still exciting, just less exciting. But get into it. Molly Meatball McCann, who is an exciting fighter, she's just not on the level anymore. She got rear naked choked in round 1. She realized she's not on the level, and she ended up retiring. So she was fun. She was a fun fighter, even though she, wasn't an undefeated fighter by any means, but fun fighter. So shout out to Molly. I'm sure we'll see her around at every, England card probably going forward. She'll be in the crowd, probably drinking a bunch of beers or something.
She's done a lot compared to a lot of other people. I mean, it's a tough sport. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I always think about that spinning back fist knockout she had. That was just great. So shout out to Molly. Also on the card, Gunnar Nelson versus Kevin Holland. We talked about this last week. Kevin really needing a win. Gunnar been out for 2 years, so Kevin did end up coming in. He got the decision win, but Gunnar basically took him down at will. But when he was on top of him, he just didn't go for submissions. He wasn't landing any ground and pound. Really, Kevin was getting more done from his back. You remember he had that knockout of our boy Jacare Souza from the ground. So it was a lot of that. There was one exciting part where Kevin had him in an omoplata, and Gunnar just stood up and was holding him on one arm, like holding him up by his leg. So it was a close fight. Ultimately, Kevin got the decision just because he was more active, honestly. So
he needed a win. So
yeah, definitely needed a win. Welterweight is also where he needs to stay. I didn't think about this beforehand, but this fight was at welterweight. He's been going up in down between welterweight and middleweight, and those grapplers at middleweight are just too big for him. Like that RDR fight, RDR walks around like over 200 pounds, like 225 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like Kevin's not that. He's not that big, so he's got a great frame for welterweight, so he should stay down there. All right, co-main event: Jan Blachowicz versus Carlos Ulberg.
Yeah. Ulberg gets the decision here. What do you think of this fight, honestly? Like,
I just thought Ulberg's speed advantage was so big. Jan been out for a while, like 2 years, I think. He had double shoulder surgeries, but he landed some good leg kicks, but that's all he could really land on Ulberg. The speed advantage was just too big.
Because I watched the fight, I thought Ulberg won, but I remember thinking like I wasn't sure when a decision was going to be. I didn't feel like it was like a convincing win either way. Did you feel like this was convincing?
It was close, but I thought they got it right. I would have picked Ulberg as well, but I mean, it was basically just based off of a jab. You know, he landed those jabs, and
I guess what I'm wondering is like, do you think that based off this performance that because there's not a ton of options, but should Carlos Ulberg getting a title shot out of this?
I don't think that they will give him one now.
Yeah,
so, it's stylistically though too. Like Jan is just so tough.
Yeah,
he's scary. So I mean, think about Ankalaev's the champ, and he had a draw with him. You know, they were like, they really went to war at some points in that fight. So he's just really hard to deal with. So it's hard to have a showcase performance against him for sure.
I think give Bahera the rematch, and then maybe Ulberg could fight Yuri Prohaska. And
that'd be a very fun fight.
Yeah, fun fight, and then the winner
title eliminator.
And you're excited about who's getting a title shot at that point.
Right, and someone's probably going to sleep in that fight between those two, and that gets you excited for the title fight. So I think that's probably the best way to go, yeah.
All right, let's get to this main event here.
All right, main event, Leon Rocky Edwards versus Sean Brady.
I knew who won this fight. I was really impressed with Sean Brady's performance in terms of just an all-around performance, whether it was on the feet, whether it was a takedown. At the same time, all the improvements Edwards has made as champion, like I don't feel like coming off that Bilal loss, he looked like a different fighter. It looked like Brady had the game plan ready for the guy who's been, and that's the guy who showed up. So I don't impressive performance for Sean. I'll let you elaborate, but I think that you could definitely make an argument that he could get a title shot coming up from the winner of Jack Della and Bilal. But if they don't go that way, I mean, Shavkat is a great fight for him as well, and I don't know, Kamaru Usman's got to be out there somewhere too if he ever wants to get back into this. So I think there's a big fight coming up for Sean again. But, you just beat the former champ. So I kind of almost hope he gets a title shot.
I know Ian Gary just lost, but I think Shavkat's going to be out for a while. So what about Ian Gary and Sean Brady? That would be fun too.
That's a fun fight. And given the competitiveness in some ways that Ian was with Shavkat, even though we thought Shavkat was better overall, I think Ian's stock, that was one of those fights where his stock rose too. So it could put him in a really good position. So it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Yeah. Back to this fight with Leon. Brady, round 4 submission. I called it. Shout out to me. No, but I didn't expect him to dominate all around. Like you said, he was dominating on the feet as well. So Leon basically gave up shortly after the fight started. So Brady looks so much better than he did like back when he lost to Bilal. I know he was like on antibiotics or something like that. There was some excuse for why that fight happened, but ultimately I think he just wasn't ready. And now he's come in and brought it to a new level. And I'm with you. I think he needs one more. You could argue for a title shot, but I think he needs one more whether it's Ian Gary or if Shavkat could come back. I bet Shavkat probably gets an immediate shot depending on who's the champ, but or Usman. I'm with you. I don't understand where Usman's been. He should be vying to get in this position. I think he would like a fight against Bilal matchup wise. So yeah, but
we'll see.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, let's talk about Fight Night, Erceg versus Moreno in Mexico. This should be a good main event, and we're going to cover the main event and potentially 2 co-main events because depending on what site you go to, SureDog, UFC, we have a couple potential co-main events here. And is there any other fights you want to talk about first, actually, before we get to that?
Yeah, I just want to shout out the Raul Rosas Jr. versus Vince Morales. You know, this being a Mexico card, there's a lot of Mexican fighters on it. I'm pretty sure Raul is from America, but he's of Mexican descent, so they have him as a Mexican flag with a Mexican flag on there. But Morales is a fairly well-rounded fighter, but the UFC is obviously trying to build a star in Rojas, so they're bringing him along slowly, as they should. You know, they learned from the likes of Sage Northcutt and Mickey Gall and all that, but there are no easy fights in the UFC. So, plus Mexico City's altitude going to be tough. He goes all out in that first round. He mauls guys, but it's tough for him afterwards. So he's gassed out before. Mexico City is going to be really tough. But that being said, I think he's probably learned from that before. He's aware Mexico City is at altitude. So I'll pick him decision win.
All right. Let's talk about the one we don't think is probably going to be the co-main event, but it is listed. Drew Dober versus Manuel Torres El Loco. You pitched that. Okay, so that's fine. I'll go about it right now. Dober 27, 14-1, 14 knockouts, 6 submissions, 7 decisions, 13-10 in UFC. Fight of the night 4 times, performance of the night 4 times. Dober is the epitome of a dog. Like, he's just a guy that always brings it. He's on a 2-fight losing streak right now, but he's just always in those competitive fights. That being said, Manuel Torres El Loco, 15-3, 7 knockouts, 7 submissions, only 1 decision. He's 3-1 in the UFC. He is coming off his first loss. He's from the Contender Series. I feel like this is a fight where they're trying to give Torres somebody to showcase. Like, they're hoping Dober and him can tear it up. They're going to have a banger, but ultimately I think they want Torres to win because, let's be honest, Dober is probably on the later part of his career at this point. Even though I don't think he's that old necessarily, but he just
has a lot of fights, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'll go Torres here. Oh, it's always so tough to think that you're going to finish Dober necessarily, although sometimes he puts himself in situations to be finished. So I'm going to go Torres decision.
Yeah, Torres' only loss in the UFC is to Bahamondes, who we know is fantastic. He just beat Jalen Turner a couple weeks ago. And like you mentioned, all of Torres' fights in the UFC are finishes, including a submission over Chris Duncan, who just fought last week too and won. So impressive. We know Dober's tough, but I'm with you. This feels like a showcase for Manuel. So I'm going to pick Torres by TKO in round 3.
All right. And let's talk about this other potential co-main event here.
All right. Probable co-main, I would say. Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer.
All right. Kelvin Gastelum, 19-9-1, 6 knockouts, 5 submissions, 8 decision. He's a guy. He's got a fight in the UFC Hall of Fame recently with him and Adesanya. He's had a great career so far. He's been really close. He's won some good fights. But in the last few years, it's like you can see almost a decline, I want to say. Like, the better part of his career is probably behind him. That being said, throughout Kelvin's career, he's always been an up and down fighter, whether it's his weight and his discipline. So I don't know what Kelvin will see come into this fight. But Joe Pyfer, 13-3, 9 knockouts, 3 submissions, 1 decision. Joe Pyfer hits hard, very hard. And I could easily see him finishing Kelvin, who doesn't get finished easy. But, he's got that kind of knockout. That being said, Pyfer has shown some inexperience, in some of his fights, and Kelvin is the more experienced fighter here. I could see Kelvin pulling this off, dragging into deep waters, submitting him, getting a decision. I'm going to go Pyfer. I'm going to go, the more I think about it, no, I'm going to go Kelvin by decision because as this fight goes on, I think Pyfer's going to struggle, but we'll see.
Yeah, Kelvin has a world-class chin, and Pyfer broke Francis's record on that punch power machine. Very interesting matchup. But I think if Joe wants to win, he needs to get Kelvin out of there quickly. Again, the altitude going to be a factor. So Joe has gassed out in fights before as well. He's very heavily muscled. Kelvin has amazing cardio, which we know. And like you said, experience. So I'm sure his team around him and himself, they know what they need to do to get ready for Mexico City. So Kelvin could probably fight 10 rounds, so Joe needs to be prepared for that, or he needs to knock him out very quickly. So if anyone is going to crack Kelvin's granite chin, it'll be Joe Pyfer, but it's tough to call. I'm a big fan of Kelvin, but I'm with you. I do feel like he's been on a decline.
Yes.
Pyfer is at, his peak, what it feels like confidence-wise, at least for sure. So I'm going to pick Joe by round 2 TKO, even though that hurts me. And I like Joe, but I'm rooting for Kelvin.
See, my brain kind of tells me the same thing, and it's not even just my heart, but I just stylistically, I don't know if the Kelvin we've seen in the past comes in at his best. I feel like he's a tough matchup for Joe because that chin is so granted at times, but who knows? Your chin can go at any point, and he's been in a lot of wars, and Joe hits really hard.
I mean, Adesanya is not a knockout artist.
No.
But he put Kelvin down 3 or 4 times in that one fight. So,
but Adesanya's also knocked out Alex Pereira too. So I mean, he's got that kind of precision,
Exactly. Yeah.
But let's get to
main event. Brandon Moreno versus Steve Erceg.
Steve Erceg's 12-3, 2 knockouts, 6 submissions, 4 decisions. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, but to be fair, one of those was the champ Pantoja, which was a decision loss. All 5 rounds of Pantoja, who's a dog and a killer. And the other one was Kai Kara-France, where he did get TKO'd, but Kai Kara-France is probably one of the hardest hitters at flyweight. So
for sure.
Yeah. But you're going against Brandon Moreno here. 22, 8-2, 5 knockouts, 11 submissions, 6 decisions. He's 11-5-2 UFC, but he's a 2-time flyweight champion, former interim flyweight champion, performance of the night 3 times, and second most fight bonuses in UFC flyweight division history. So, he's a fun fighter. He's a great fighter, and he's a guy fighting in his home country of Mexico, and he takes a lot of pride in that. He is going to be, I expect him to be extremely on for this fight. I think he will get the finish because we know now Erceg can be finished thanks to Kai Kara-France. And I'm going to say it's probably 3rd round TKO.
Yeah, Erceg put on a great showing versus Pantoja, even though he came up short. If you remember that, I believe that was a short notice fight too. But the top flyweights are many levels above the rest of the division. So he kind of got pushed up there with those top guys quickly. That's because it's a very top heavy division, so far when he's fighting the top guys, he's coming up short. So Moreno showed he belongs up there at the top time and time again. Arguably one of the greatest flyweights in the UFC of all time. So I think he's going to dominate Erceg. I'm with you later in the fight getting a finish. I'll say round 4 submission. I think he knocks him down and jumps on his neck and submits him.
I think his feud with Davis and Figueiredo, too, is one of the great rivalries in combat sports. That sometimes because of the smaller weight class doesn't get the credit it deserves. I mean, four great fights, and literally – it was 1-1-1 going into that, 4th fight. Yeah, where honestly, I think Figueiredo's the weight cuts had finally kind of gotten to him over the years, I think, too.
True, yeah, very tough weight cut for him.
Yeah, but yeah, so it should be a fun card this weekend. A lot of great, I like a lot of style matchups on this one. This could be one of the better fight nights we've seen in a while. So.
Yeah, Mexico usually shows out.
But on a sad note, transition here. One of the great legends of boxing, George Foreman, passed away. George was 76-5, a career record, 68 knockouts, 8 decisions. That's very impressive for a boxer, especially a heavyweight. But just to turn people's lights out. He was a gold medalist in the '68 Olympics. He won the heavyweight championship for the first time from Joe Frazier in '73.
He knocked him down 6 times in 2 rounds to beat him.
Yes, he did. That's true. And then at a Rumble in the Jungle, he lost to Muhammad Ali, which was in '74. He came back. After he lost to Jimmy Young eventually in '77, and that's when he decided to retire. And after 10 years, he announced his comeback. And in 1994, at 45 years old, he became heavyweight champion again, knocking out Michael Moore. Now,
oldest heavyweight champ in history.
Oldest heavyweight championship in history. And if you can just find some of these clips on Instagram, like Michael Buffer announces this, like the impossible has happened. He's done it, heavyweight history, because he wasn't expected to do that. People don't win championships in combat sports at that age, even heavyweight. Like that's unheard of. But George had that great punching power, which always kept him in the game. And he had a fight with Evander Holyfield before that for the title, which you thought that might have been his last chance. And he had an excellent fight with Holyfield. Holyfield had a great chin. He could not put Holyfield away. They had a great round. You look back at it, but at the end, George ended up getting this title shot with Michael Moore. And I remember watching this. And I remember when he came back, I want to say it was in '87, and he started doing his comeback fights, watching it with my dad on the old Tuesday night fights on USA Network. And I remember just watching him, knocked out a lot of these preliminary boxers, but that was, him working his way up. It was slow process and knocking everybody out. And
he was fighting like every month when he came back.
Very frequent. They give you that, like, old school parent. Like, I didn't wake my dad up for bullshit reasons. I woke my dad up because I was like, hey, and he's like, what? And I'm like, George Foreman won the title. And I remember my dad being like, shit, get out of here. He was excited for it, but he couldn't believe it. And so I always thought, one of the true fun guys to, the George Foreman grill, his whole thing with all his kids named George.
I had one. I had a George Foreman grill.
You did? Yeah. Seemed like a good guy, and really sorry to see his passing, because you don't see many great ambassadors like that for combat sports in general. But anything you want to say about Big George?
I think you covered it. Yeah, just we lost a champion from the golden era of boxing, really, and another one gone. So just a reminder to appreciate these athletes while we have them.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And appreciate your loved ones. Condolences to the Foreman family. He will be missed by everybody. Why don't we tell people what we got coming up one more time?
All right. April 5th, UFC Fight Night, Emmett versus Murphy, 9 p.m. from the Apex. April 12th, UFC 314, Volkanovski versus Lopez, 10 p.m. from Miami for the vacant, will be vacant featherweight title. Mm-hmm. And then April 19th, there's no UFC, so we'll figure something out, maybe talk about some PFL.
All right, guys. And we're going to go to Game Up, our sponsor. But before that, I'm just going to put this picture up here one more time and just want to say thank you for the memories, George.
If you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at drinkgameup.com.